Yo, what up YouTube? Welcome back to the video. Today's video, I'll be giving you guys Gibraltar's weapon tier list. Now, when it comes to a lot of these weapon tier lists, it's about people's opinions of which guns they like to favor, so they put higher on the list, and which guns they're not that good at, so that they tend to put it a lot lower on the list. Now, this specific tier list is going to be simply about what weapons you should be using as Gibraltar, and which ones should kind of stay away from going towards the bottom of the list. Again, a lot of these are really not opinionated. They're simply about what weapons actually work really good with Gibraltar in the bubble and bubble fighting. So that's what I base a lot of these guns off of, is how clutch can they be in the bubble, stuff like that. So in the comments below, let me know what you think, what you would change differently about this list. If you put a gun a lot higher on the list, or if you put a gun a lot lower on the list, or if you think I got it perfectly right, let me know in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and enjoy. All right, YouTube, so this is pretty much the tier list. I'm going to start off with S tier and go down and explain why each weapon deserves to be in these tiers. Now, keep in mind, D tier and up are weapons that I still use. D and C tier are kind of weapons I'll use here and there, just whenever I'm feeling it, but more than likely, you'll always see me use the S tier and A tier at all times. B tier, kind of whenever needed. And then trash, I just recommend never picking up unless you absolutely have to at the beginning of the game, of course. So let's start off with S tier. Kraber is going to be the best weapon no matter what legend you play. Of course, you know, headshots, instant knock, body shots do a lot of damage still. So if you pair it up with someone else shooting, you're pretty much going to get a knock that way. Now, of course, Kraber, if someone's shooting a Kraber at Gibby and you're shooting at like a Wraith that has, you both have Krabers. Pretty much, you're on a dropper automatically and your arm shield is going to protect you from taking a lot of damage. So Kraber's going to be S tier. Again, no explanation really. Mastiff is really good for fighting multiple enemies at one time. So unlike the PK, Mastiff shoots extremely fast, does a little less damage, but you can still hit pretty hard. You can hit consistent 80s on a whole team to help out your team. If you're in a 2v3 situation, you're going to come out on top. 1v2 situation, it's a lot faster at shooting. It's always going to be S tier. You should always use the Mastiff if you use something like a Hemlock, Havoc, Sentinel, stuff like that. If you like to use sniper with a shotgun, Mastiff is going to be the wave. It's going to be the best shotgun because, again, if you're using a really slow weapon, you want a fast shooting shotgun, and Eva's is not the choice, of course, as you see it's in trash. Mastiff's the go-to. Now, PK. PK is going to be my favorite weapon. A lot of people always ask me, what's your favorite weapon for Gibraltar? What's your favorite weapon in general as Gibraltar to use? It's going to be the PK no matter what. The reason why it's a PK, because of how hard it hits. Now, a lot of people struggle with ADSing, and they have to hip fire. Here's the beautiful thing about Gibby. If you're bubble fighting and you use a PK, just go ahead and ADS. ADS them until your arm shield breaks. So if you're in a one-on-one engagement, both you have shotguns, you pop them for 80, they pop you for 50 because your arm shield, whatever it is, or 40, whatever it is, because your arm shield. Now you can hip fire. So as soon as your arm shield breaks, take that advantage and just start hip firing. Now you can move a lot faster in the bubble. You don't have to ADS because there's no point anymore because, again, your arm shield's broken. Hip fire away. And the PK is one of the most accurate and hardest hitting guns in the game, especially with hip firing. So I highly recommend PK for that reason. And that's why I'm always going to recommend PK no matter what. So A tier. A tier is going to be the 301. Of course, there's no explanation needed. 301 is one of the most accurate guns in the game. Shoot long range, mid range. Hip firing is insane, and bubble plays with it. It's absolutely disgusting paired up with melee. Car, same thing, except for it doesn't shoot far range. And the car is one of those weapons, if you don't feel like using it, it's still extremely good. And if you have like a light mag and you find a 301 later on, it's a good substitute till you find that 301. Or if you want to craft the flatline and you have a heavy mag on it, it's a really good substitute until you find that flatline. Or not till you find it, till you craft it at least. So car is extremely good to use. Again, I have it so high on the list is because of how accurate and smooth it feels in the bubble fights. ADSing, not ADSing, whatever it is. It's a really solid weapon to use. And again, it's kind of like one of those, you can use it for now until you find the actual weapon you want because it can hold the mags for it. Now, Volt SMG is the most, it's so accurate now. When it comes to it being a care package weapon, it kind of sucks. But it's so accurate and deadly, it has a lot of ammo, hits hard. And it's just kind of those, if you don't pick it up, what are you doing? You know? So pick it up. I recommend it. Of course, if you pair it up with the shotgun, it's absolutely disgusting. Mid-range, far range, bubble fighting. R9 is going to be B tier. The reason why I don't have an A tier is it's not as good as it used to be. 301, car, Volt are all better weapons that you want over the R9. R9 is still that loved weapon that everyone likes, but be realistic. It doesn't have that punch from mid range to far range like other weapons do, like the car, like 301, like the Volt. It's still a really good bubble fighting weapon. I recommend it. Alternator is kind of like the hybrid between the 301 R9. That's why I still have it B tier. It hits extremely hard mid range. It's good in bubble fights. ADSing with it because again, it kind of acts like a 301 when you're ADSing with it, close range. Flatline's going to be B tier as well. Flatline, it would be A tier if you didn't have to craft it, but you had to go out of your way to get this weapon. Still a hard hitting weapon, one of the best weapons to fight in the bubble with. That's an assault rifle. So I highly recommend crafting it if you can. Again, use that car until you find a flatline. More than likely, you'll keep using the car and find out that you like the car a lot. Next on the list is going to be the Prowler. This goes to show that this is not really opinionated. I don't really use the Prowler. If this is just like my own opinions on which weapons I would use for Gibby, I would put this down on the list further because I just don't like using it as like a player myself. I wouldn't use this on Wraith or anything like that. But the Prowler is really good to use in the bubble. If you can sit there and poke out, hit someone with all 5 shots, and come back in the other way when they try to rotate back in, going in and out of the bubble, work and twerk, you can pretty much hit them with all 5 shots, hit them again with all 5 shots, and pretty much 2-burst somebody or 3-burst somebody in the bubble. It's extremely good to use ADSing in the bubble. That's why I have it, again, so high up on the list. Sentinel. Sentinel is going to be the only ground sniper, of course, that I have this high up. I kind of still count the longbow as like a ground weapon, even though you have to craft it. Sentinel, you don't really have to craft it. It's extremely good fighting in the bubble, which might surprise a lot of people. It's really good at quick scoping in it. You can ADS and kind of follow people going out of the bubble with it, so you can kind of still use your arm shield. Hip firing's insane. This gun's extremely accurate with hip firing, no matter what it is. In long range, it's a beast at leveling up your Evo shields, getting knocks, hitting people for 126 from far away. I highly recommend it. Wingman's going to be the last one on the B tier. And again, this is kind of one of those guns that I'm not making an opinion about it. I would have it lower in the list because I don't like using it that much. But it's extremely strong to use in the bubble. If I have to use this weapon in the bubble fight, I'm extremely happy about it because of how hard it can hit in the chest and how hard it hits for body shots or like headshots I meant. And you can still ADS with it. You don't have to hip fire with it. This is an ADS weapon you can use in the bubble, kind of like a shotgun. And it shoots extremely fast as well, and it hits hard. So I highly recommend using the Wingman for that reason. Let's go down to C tier. C tier Havoc. It would be higher. I just don't really like the fact that you have to charge up a weapon as Gibby. It's still extremely hard hitting. I recommend trying to pair this up with a 2-4, and that might sound a little awkward, especially for me being a controller player. 2-4 might sound a little awkward, but it's extremely accurate. Hits are extremely hard. And it's also a really solid bubble weapon to use. That's why I still have it C tier. Hemlock, probably one of my favorite weapons in the game. It's going to be, if it's opinionated, it's going to be my A tier to S tier. It's one of my favorite weapons to use. But let's be honest, it's kind of C tier. It's solid from far range and mid range. It's kind of okay fighting in the bubble. You mostly have to hip fire it in the bubble. You really can't ADS with it too much. But the headshots hit hard. I recommend pairing this gun up with a 1-2. I'm a bot, I'm sorry. I recommend pairing up the 1-2 scope. That might seem a little awkward, but that's the only time I'll use the 1-2 is on the Hemlock. Longbow is next on the C tier. Longbow, again, you have to craft it. It's not as desirable as it used to be, and you have to kind of pre-plan that you want a longbow. You have to land next to the crafting station and, get all the materials for it. Then you have to find the scopes for it. So it's not as desirable. Still really good to use, though. Shoots extremely fast. Does a lot of damage, of course. Next is the Mozambique. Of course, as you see, I have the Mozambique higher than the Eva. The Mozambique's actually really consistent. It's probably the most consistent shotgun dealing damage-wise. You can always hit it for a solid 20 pluses, 40 pluses, whatever it is. And if it's kind of mid-range to kind of a little bit of far range with the hammer points, you can hit people for 60 still. It does a lot of damage from far range and probably one of the hardest hitting shotguns from far range. So I highly recommend using the Mozambique more, especially if you use a 301, you clip someone for 150, they get behind cover, they go to peek real quick while they're taking a bat to see where you're at, and you just pop them really quick with the Mozambique, and they pretty much get knocked. P20, same thing. It hits extremely hard. It shoots extremely fast for the amount of damage it does, which a lot of people kind of sleep on a P20. P20 is probably one of my favorite weapons to use, and especially the hammer point now. It absolutely destroys. You can just use the P20 by itself with the hammer points and destroy people's shield no matter what it is, even in bubble fights. Spitfire, also C tier. The reason why I have Spitfire, again, not so high on the list, is I don't really like using this weapon too much in the bubble. I'm not a big fan of using LMGs in the bubble because you have to hold down the trigger the entire time you're going in and out, which makes you extremely predictable. Um, but Spitfire is extremely accurate from far away. Really good paired up with the arm shield, being able to hide behind cover or whatever it is, be out in the open and just shoot it. Because again, it hits hard, shoots fast, and with your arm shield, you're able to actually stay out there a little bit longer with the Spitfire. Charge rifle, last on the C tier list. Charge rifle, I have it, kind of mid range with the tier list because it hits extremely hard from far away. It's not that good in the bubble, of course. You can still hit fire, and as long as you hit that last shot, it does a lot of damage even in bubble fights. So even though it's not the most consistent weapon to switch to close range, still hits pretty hard. One of the best weapons to get evo shields with and get free KP from far away. Next, we got the D tier list. So Bocek, I have a D tier. I just don't like using it in the bubble. It takes a little bit to draw it back to get that full potential damage off of it. You really don't need the shatter rounds pretty much because, again, then you're not really using your arm shield and protecting yourself, getting that extra 50 damage and abusing that. You're just trying to just pretty much just hope for the best when it comes to that. You might as well just use a shotgun in its place or just use a massive paired up with the Bocek. Bocek's good from far away, just kind of plucking at people, kind of annoying them, getting knocks here and there, but it's not a really solid weapon to use. I'd much rather use a charge rifle than a Bocek if I want to get my shield up and my damage up. L-Star is going to be next on the list. The reason I don't have this in trash tier, because L-Star is still extremely good to use. You don't have to worry about charging it up and get that damage going. It's still an LMG. You still have to kind of spray with it in the bubble, but at least with this weapon, you can kind of tap fire it, go on the inside the bubble, tap fire again. So it's kind of somewhat better than the Devo and the Rampage, of course, but still, LMG weapon, you're extremely predictable as Gibby in the bubble with it. RE45, I don't have it with the Mozam MP20, even though it has hammer points as well. I don't find it as hard hitting. I feel like with the RE45, you have to hit all your shots in order to do something with it. It's very low tier compared to the R9 alternator. I don't have it trash tier because it's still a solid weapon to use if you hit all your shots. So it's going to be D tier. G7 Scout is going to stay so low on the list until they finally put it back on the floor. If they put this gun back on the floor, I don't care what they do with it, how much damage they take away from it. It's going to be A tier. By far one of the best weapons to use as Gibby from mid-range, far range. Because you can abuse your arm shield all you want from mid-range, far range, and contest a sniper until your arm shield goes away. You can put a lot of damage out the G7, and it's just a good Gibby weapon to have. But simple fact is, you really don't drop this. You don't drop a weapon for the G7 at all when it comes to care packages. So I don't recommend it. That's why it's going to be D tier. Triple Take is probably going to surprise a lot of people. I know this video is going to be a little long, my bad. But Triple Take is by far one of the most opinionated weapons when it comes to it should be the best. It should be the best for any legend because of how hard it hits. That's not the case with Gibby. With Gibby, it's kind of like the charge rifle. Except for it doesn't shoot that far away. That's why I have it lower than charge rifle. You can still poke with it. You can do some damage. Level up your evo shields. But if I want to level up my evo shields and get my damage up, that's why the charge rifle and Sentinel is so high up on the list. When it comes to bubble fighting, people quote unquote count it as a shotgun. Well, you have to hip fire with it. Not very often can you actually ADS in the bubble and abuse your arm shield. That's what you want to do. With the PK, you can abuse your arm shield when it goes away. Then you can finally hip fire. With the Triple Take, you barely get that option to ADS and use your arm shield. Even with hip firing, it's not that good at when people kind of pixel peek you. It doesn't hit that hard. So I don't recommend it. That's why it's so low on the list. Even though it's a really good weapon, I'll use this weapon on any other legend. Put it up higher on the list. For Gibby, I just don't recommend it. Now let's go with the trash list. I know this might surprise people, but the Devo is in the trash list. A lot of people will get the thought that Gibby should be paired up with the Devo at all times. I just don't see it that way. Again, when you're fighting in the bubble, the last thing you want to do is be predictable. And with the Devo, you really can't tap fire it. Even though you have a turbocharger, you can't just go out real quick, take 5 shots, go back in the inside, take 5 shots. You have to hold down the trigger. So when you're holding down the trigger, you're going in and out, and you're just constantly shooting. So people can see your movement very easily and just predict exactly what you're doing. And they can kind of also back up and just make you waste all your bullets. And now you're just shooting the bubble pretty much. So one of the worst weapons to shoot in the bubble. When it comes to mid-range and far range is not accurate at all unless you're an absolute beamerson. Of course, when it gets started up, of course, it becomes more accurate. But Honestly, with the Devo, if you're out in the middle, trying to fight somebody like hit up, it takes a while for it to finally charge up, and by that time, you're a big hitbox. You're gonna get hit by anybody. I don't care if you're 1v1 in someone with the Devo, if it's a Wraith the Devo, you're gonna get put down because she's able to move a lot more than you are because you're trying to ADS, while she can sit there and hip fire you down the entire time. And if you try to hip fire, well, you're still gonna go down first because more than likely they're gonna hit more shots than you. So that's why Devo's a trash list. Eva, by far, it just at its worst point it's ever been. It used to be S tier, A tier. Since all the nerfs they did to it, with the slower shooting, with the shotgun bolts, with the damage nerf, it hits for like 58s. And that's not a good thing to do, is just consistent 58s in the bubble when you can sit there and use a PK or massive and hit for 80s and 100s. So when you're trying to fight like a Wraith or something, you're using Eva and you're hitting for 58s and she's hitting for 80s, you're going to get put down real quick. So I don't recommend it, even though it shoots fast. The Mozambique shoots a lot faster. Mozambique hits harder and is more consistent with its damage. So I just don't recommend using Eva anymore. Again, with all the trash weapons, you can still use them, of course. Just know that it's best if you can trade it out at some point. Like if you're using a Devo, I highly recommend trading out for a Havoc at some point. Or even if the Volt, if you find the Volt in the care package, just drop the Devo for it. With the Eva, if you ever find a Mozambique or higher, massive PK, please drop it for that. Next is a Rampage. Rampage is going to be the equivalent of Devo, except for it shoots slower and it's not as consistent at all as hip firing. The Rampage is absolutely utter butter, as I like to say. Not a good weapon at all to use. A big thing with the Rampage is, again, it's a solid weapon. It's in the meta, but you can't really stand out in the open as Gibby and just keep shooting it, because if you start missing your shots, because again, it's a slow, not as consistent weapon for, just consistent like aiming at least. It's just extremely hard to use, and I just don't recommend it. I don't know how else to explain it, except for it's just not as consistent as other weapons. You can use a Spitfire more accurate than you can a Rampage. Spitfire is a lot more accurate, of course. Rampage, even though it can shoot further away, it can do some heavy damage, especially when ramped up with a thermite grenade. It's just not good to use in bubble fights, again, because you have to hip fire it, and the hip firing is not consistent at all, and it's extremely slow, so it's a lot worse than using a Devo in the bubble. 3030 is last on the list. I have it at trash. Again, it's one of those weapons that you don't want to substitute it for a shotgun. It's just not going to do the same damage output as a shotgun can do in a bubble, and you really can't ADS with it and use it as a shotgun. You have to hip fire it. ADSing with it, you might as well just drop that weapon for a G7 as soon as you find a G7. That's the only weapon I would actually drop for the G7 is a 3030, because it's equivalent to G7. It might hit a little harder, but it shoots a lot slower than a G7 because you have to wait for that charge up time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know it was an extremely long video. I thought it was going to be a lot shorter than that, but I think I explained a lot, like way too much for these weapons. But hopefully you guys can kind of get an understanding of my thought process of why these weapons deserve to be in their certain spots. Of course, a lot of the higher tier, not really much explanation. I still explain anyway. Lower tier, I tried my best to explain why you should be using these as Gibby. Again, a lot of these are opinionated for a lot of people. Some of these weapons I put on here, I would have a lot lower or higher just because of what I like to use with any legend. But just to keep it down to Gibby specific and like his mechanics of using the arm shield, using bubble fights, abusing that arm shield from far range. This is the list that you should be thinking about. Again, you should always be upgrading your weapons to the best one. If you're ever sitting there using the triple take, if you can never do it, find a charge rifle sentinel, just drop the triple take for it. Same thing when it comes to the car is probably the only one I'd go down on the list. Car. If you like R9 more, you can kind of hold light mags and stuff for it. If you can hold it for a 301. So hopefully you guys enjoy the list. If you guys think that anything should be changed at all, or if you think something, again, should be higher on the list, lower on the list, or if I got it perfectly right, just let me know in the comment section below. I want to hear all your all's feedback on what you want to see next, tier list wise. And also I just want to hear your all's opinions on what you think should go where on this tier list specifically. So I appreciate everyone for watching. I know it was a long video. I like to talk a lot. I can't help it. I'm a bot lord. I like to blame Mystic a lot of the times. But other than that, peace out. My love. See you guys in the next video. Peace.